Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhodes on the Buy Here Pay Here morning show. Take it away, you two.
Hey,
Good morning, friends.
Good morning. It is Wednesday.
Yeah, we're kind of scrambling to get to the desk this morning. That sometimes happens.
You're still buttoning up your.
And I may not be wearing pants today. This is part of we're going to keep the shot right up here.
Yes.
The
mystery. I should have just left it as a mystery.
She looked under the desk to check, so we're across the desk from one another.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Good morning. It's amazing how fast the last few days have gone.
Amen.
For us, and I did my first. Y'all who listen. Did I say that right, y'all?
Yeah. She's been working on her y'all. Yeah, she's the Seattle girl.
Yeah. Living in Guyman, Oklahoma, and a friend here said, "Hey, I need to go into Amarillo, which is the closest big town.
2 hours.
2 hours away." And so we drove in and did Sam's Club and sorry, there's a plug for Sam's Club, and had lunch and did some shopping for Christmas. And it was just really fun. And I was like, okay, this is now
Your new
the
reality.
Yep.
Yeah.
So another thing, those of you who are seeing this right here.
Oh, over her shoulder. Yeah. The new white hat.
And it was something we had to special order. And then they called us before we went to Utah because it was out of Utah that we ordered it.
Yeah.
Jim says he has a freakishly large head.
Every place I go in, they're like, "Sir, we don't have that size here.
That's not a size.
Nobody carries
carry.
that size." Yeah.
So we got a call just before we went to Utah, and they said, "Hey, we got your hat in. If you're still interested, give us a call."
Yeah.
So we did.
And
so
got
now
the felt hat
Jim
shape a little
has
bit.
the hat, and so next conference you will be seeing him.
Yeah.
Donning.
Still a little more
hat
shaping to
from
be
White Hat.
done, so we can kind of get a
it's a good
classic
looking
and
hat.
repeatable.
And I think
It
we're
is.
in the right place. I mean, we can take the hat to Amarillo, and it's like we're Texas or we're Oklahoma, which also does cowboy hats. But
I picked up some boots when we were back in Utah because I knew coming back to Oklahoma, you never know when you travel around this part of Oklahoma. You don't know when there's going to come a need to rope some goats or to kick some stuff. So you just don't know. So you got to have boots. So got the boots, got the hat. I'm back to my roots.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that we're sufficiently caught up with all things personal. Jim and Michelle Rhodes.
Yeah.
So today,
today we're definitely taking on the white hat topic as usual with a Wednesday, and I feel like with this one, we are going to do the best we can to drive home how this can make a difference in your business, like tomorrow.
Yes.
Today.
And there were a few things as we were going through and working on talking points and all of that it was just like, that's really a strong point. So I'm looking forward to just strong points. So
as usual, we chose a topic, we ran it through ChatGPT and got some instruction, and I'm finding that's really wonderful for coming up with additional thoughts that we hadn't necessarily considered.
So those of you who know, we've been working on our own ChatGPT AI for White Hat Way, and so our she's like virtual assistant, whatever. She's she has had every transcript from podcasts.
I'm listening. Am I distracting you?
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Every transcript from podcasts, everything that's written so she's like fully versed in all that we teach. And so when we ask for, so on this subject, give us some talking points, it like just draws from a lot of different things that we've talked about.
Sure.
And adding in whatever it is.
Because not just things we've talked about, but it understands, it grasps the entire philosophy and approach and strategy that is White Hat Way. So it's able to, offer additional points of view, just like a third person would in a conversation. But this is, the obviously the machine has the capability to access tons and tons of content in a split second. And so it brings back
some
that
of the things we've been asking her are just like, what do you think about this? And then she's pulling case studies and, all of the things that are like documented from out in the ether. That's like, oh, I wasn't even aware that they did a case study about this, which supports something that we've been teaching, or
of course,
whatever. And it's pretty darn cool. And before we move on, Jim has worked on my background.
Oh yeah.
and he's still trying to figure out what he wants to do for his.
So this is Michelle and I are across the desk from one another. I'll grab a third camera one day and we'll set it up where people can better see the whole layout. But I'm looking at Michelle and across to the wall across. So, but yeah, my wall is completely bare.
To look at all the time.
So all good. We'll get there.
Alrighty. So now, should go ahead.
Yeah. So let's dive into this thing about flexibility. I think flexibility is an easy enough word for us to understand. I think the question is, how do we train our people around that? How do we, how flexible are we on a day-to-day when we show up? And kind of looked at 4 areas of the business in terms of flexibility. One is going to be lead management and working leads and nurturing leads and kind of qualifying or pre-qualifying, or sometimes I call it disqualifying leads. How flexible are we in that part of the process? The next part would be in negotiating, right? That would be part of the sales negotiation, structuring the deal. And then the next one would be underwriting, making the decision if that's somebody separate from the folks who have already worked with the customer to this stage. And then the last one would be collections, working with a customer on the collection side, which is obviously the longer tail of the relationship. And so we're going to look at all those pieces today and kind of break them down, individually by sort of category or department, and talk about how flexibility can show up. And I think more importantly, how it can earn dealers more business just by installing some degree of flexibility at key junctures in their process. Okay.
All right. Did you want me to?
Sure.
I already put this up, and I don't know if you took it down. But first one, flexibility starts at the lead stage, like you were talking about.
Yeah. So basically, what that means for me is, we see a lot of dealers who look. Everybody's leaning on technology. It's understandable. We're gaining in technology now. AI is on the scene and doing more work for us. I think what I'm trying to balance here, when I'm looking at flexibility in the lead process, is how adaptable are we at hearing a customer story? And we see people advertise from a marketing standpoint. They'll put out something that says, you're more than your credit score. Well, okay, but if you just look at credit score plus some boxes and customer meets qualifications, yes or no, then what happens with that lead who's a no? We look at the customer and we say, this customer does not qualify. We hear a lot of dealers on Facebook saying, I'm getting a bunch of junk leads, a bunch of bad leads. Nobody qualified. Nobody got any money, whatever. So you hear that and you think, okay, well, so we're sweeping them into a pile that is not qualified, can't help them, And so I think that's the question I would have is, what is being done to make sure that we are being flexible to do when I first got in the car business, the buy here, pay here business, I should say, it was the phrasing that was used with my training was, does the customer fit your program? Your way of doing business? And there's a lot of things to consider in that besides just the things that might go on a checkbox on a piece of paper, right? In terms of job time, residence time, the basic qualifications. So I think this is part of, how we want to talk about that, which a quick aside, a reminder, we're talking about this on a Wednesday. We've got Friday. I've got the rest of the recording because last Friday,
talks about this.
We had a technical problem with the Jeff Owings podcast that we did on Friday. And so we want to finish out that podcast. And Jeff shares a lot about his own approach to underwriting over the years, right?
So with the flexibility starts at lead stage, treat every lead like a maybe. Not a no. Dealers winning right now are the ones that adopt their first touch approach based on context, credit, communication style, urgency, and life chaos. It's an interesting thing. We've worked with a lot of dealers or talked to a lot of dealers, like junk leads. It's a lead, which means all of those people you said no to were looking for a car.
Right.
And
And
we're probably going to continue looking for a car until they found a car.
Sure.
And so it's, junk leads are only junk leads if you're not flexible.
Well, and I can say I would never call it a lead a junk lead, because just because they're not a lead today doesn't mean they won't be a buyer tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right. So I think I would kind of adopt the approach that there will be customers that I cannot help today.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the key thing that I've talked about this in the podcast before, and plenty of my coaching, I am training. We always try to urge in the sales process that we meet a customer with this idea. It's in our mind when we show up at the dealership on any given day, when we walk out to greet a customer on any given day, when we sit down at the computer and we start a chat thread with anybody on any given day. I think the mindset needs to be, if anybody within 50 miles of this building can do it, it's us.
Yeah.
It's me. Like if I'm the salesperson or I'm the dealer, like I want to adopt this idea that if anybody can help this customer, it's me, which means there may come a point where we just can't get there. You can't solve income. If a customer does not have the income to support the payment that is the minimum payment, then you just can't get there. The math just won't math. And so that happens. It's not to say that every customer can become qualified, but we're talking about those customers that we miss because they're on initial pass, they don't seem to meet the checklist. And so we tend to dismiss them and move on to another one.
So the next point was qualifying leads without disqualifying people.
Right.
And so little curiosity.
Yeah.
When we stick to, and this is something that I see happen an awful lot, is like rigid scripts. Rigid disqualifying. Rigid scripts, one size fits all, pre-quals kill more deals than bad credit ever will.
Yeah. And when you play the percentages, and look, we've had some interesting conversations with some dealers lately, and dealers and other members of their professional team, I'll call it. Yeah. And they're in the process of re-examining their approval process, their deal structure, some of the stuff, because their volume is low. And so there are things that we're examining in order to make a judgment about why their volume is lower than it could be. Okay. And this is among the things we're looking at is, how are we disqualifying? Because I would say that there are so few customers. Like if you run 100 customers through a lead flow process, and I have my typical checklist of I'm looking for 6 months job time, 6 months residence, 2,000 down, whatever that list looks like. There are going to be so few customers, percentage wise, that check every single one of those boxes. Just almost any dealer, anywhere, this would be true, because they paint that line of this is the customer we're looking for. And so I think this is where the gray, I feel like in the buy here, pay here business, we live a lot in the gray. We certainly need to get comfortable living in the gray space.
That's what the industry buy here, pay here is. It's living in the gray.
Yeah. And finding ways. So to me, this all comes back. And it's the other reason you've heard me say in the past that in hiring salespeople and BDR in this case for BDC, I would be, for those not familiar, BDR is business development representative or business development center. So, so having people who are working leads. One of the things I'm looking for in terms of profile or qualification is creativity, because it's my belief that we sometimes have to get creative in order to find ways to make the deal fit and to help solve the problem that the customer is describing. We first have to understand the problem. We have to listen.
Which is the whole thing, is curiosity. It's just being curious.
Sure.
Yeah. And yeah. So
you have to understand their story. I just think this is part of why, and as we move toward AI, I think, we're going to be testing the limits of AI in terms of what can AI glean from the customer in a conversational way. Because again, if the customer doesn't check all the boxes, sometimes there's a story behind the customer's reasons that they don't, that's their situation today. And I've just done it a long time. I've owned dealerships and worked with a lot of customers in a lot of places. And I can just tell you that there's often a story behind why the customer is landing in your business today with with their credit circumstances, their income circumstances. And so I think when you think about, does the customer fit my program? Is this the kind of customer, that if I can get past this challenge of today, would they be a good customer in my portfolio for 3 years, 10 years, 30 years? So again, the small-minded kind of approach says, it's got to check all my boxes or I move on to the next one. I think we're going to miss a lot of people because we don't approach it with curiosity. We don't listen. We don't hear the entire story, and we don't have a chance to really work the lead.
So I would, I'm voicing something that I've heard from salespeople. It's like, oh my gosh, another sob story, or oh my gosh,
of course.
It's just like, and that it can be if you're like being rigid about, really rigid about qualifying or all of that, a lead, then it's like you start to hear a story. It's like, no. And then the attitude changes to, you're wasting my time.
Right.
You're wasting my time.
Yeah.
You're wasting, because I could be, and it's like, you know what? To listen to someone's story might take you 10 to 15 minutes. Is that really wasting time? Because again, like you said, you may not be able to qualify that, may not be able to, but it's like having this open dialogue and having, finding out, asking questions, being curious about the person and what landed them on your lot creates trust.
Right.
People trust those that listen to them more than those that just like, sorry, can't help you. Boom.
Right.
And so it's creating trust. Trust goes beyond the bounds of this one deal. It spreads, it ripples out. And so if you take the time to listen, to ask questions, to understand, you may be able to help them with another problem. You may be able to, it's like, oh, and you're showing empathy. That's rough. That's really rough. Okay. So, how can we make this work? Getting creative about how can we make this work? And if it ultimately doesn't work out, then it's like, okay, we're not going to be able to do this today, but here's what we can do, and here's what you can do. So, but you can't get to that point without listening and being empathetic to their situation.
And I would say, when you say, wasting time for 10 minutes, I would say you're investing time. And so what I mean by that is that I'm going to invest that time, and I may get to the end of that 10 minutes and I may still not be able to help. However, I have heard the customer in a way that now when I come back to them and say, unfortunately, our program just doesn't fit that. Unfortunately, I just won't be able to help. If your income improves, or if we can talk about getting a co-buyer who will join you and share in the financial commitment, then maybe we can talk about something like that. So please reach out to me. But I think I have a better chance of talking to that customer tomorrow because I took the time to really listen and understand what's going on with them. Because I think so many of our customers, if you said 10% of the 100 applicants that I talked about would actually check all the boxes, I doubt it's that high. But if you had 10%, then the question is, with that other 90%, what percentage of those customers are marginally qualified, or with one simple fix would be able to, we'd make an adjustment and be flexible and get them in the program, get them some wheels and get them started financing. So I think that's part of what I'd be looking at. It's just, I'd make that investment in time. I would understand them and make sure I heard their complete story. And again, I still may not be able to help at the end of that, but I have a better chance to win their business and their referral business because I just took the time to listen and understand what's going on.
Yeah. And that is, listening, just for dealers that are out there, we've worked with a lot of different dealers, and when they're looking for a new salesperson, they love it when they get someone that has experience in independent or franchise or whatever. That is it's a very different beast.
Right.
Although when you worked in franchise, it's the listening part was really essential, but it's a skill that is not common with salespeople.
Yeah.
And so it is something that can be learned, but it requires you to be willing to train them and to, take them through exercises of, salespeople inherently have like a lot of, they have more, I want to say ego, but it's just they're really, hopefully sure of themselves and all of that, then you can be those things. But if you're not stopping your talking and listening to what someone says and not interrupting, and I know I struggle with that sometimes when we're talking, interrupting, but just listening to understand instead of listening to respond.
Right.
Because the moment that a salesperson or a normal person hears something and they have a response, they're boom, there's my response. But they may have missed the lion's share of what the situation is. And so they're making assumptions based on what they just heard.
Yeah,
so
and they're
listening.
And there may be 5 elements and they are responding to one, whereas if they understood all 5 elements, there might be a different approach that we could bring to solve the problem. So I think, understanding the entire problem is certainly going to be helpful in terms of making certain that we have a chance to have a successful outcome. So I think that listening part is huge. It's about problem solving, and that's why I say the creativity. I can't solve the problem until I understand fully the problem. And so this is why I have to be able to listen. And by the way, that that thing about training, salespeople talk less. Clothespins on the lips are kind of painful, but so whatever works. It's like
Exactly.
duct tape.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next one. Negotiation built on transparency, not tension.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about tension.
Okay, so when we talk about tension in the lead process, it gets uncomfortable because the customer often, we have to remember, so many of the customers that we're going to work with, we talk about this thing about financial illiteracy, or what Candace Price called the knowledge gap, right? So there's a knowledge gap. The customer doesn't really understand a lot about financing, and that's okay. But if we run the risk of, we got to be careful about how we talk to the customer, and that we don't condescend, that we don't have some condescension, right, in the way that we speak to the customer. And so we want to help them and walk them through the process, because the customer may not understand all the elements of financing, and they certainly don't understand our program and our qualifications and all the, the kind of the boundaries that we typically work within. So it's not surprising to me the customer would not, that they would be asking questions that can be frustrating, and so it's, so how we respond to those, especially, I think it's, we all know that text can be misinterpreted.
Text,
text. So if it's a chat thread and we're texting with a customer, what we say can be misconstrued, and it's tricky. I'd much rather get them on the phone and talk through that, because I can also I can incorporate a lot more tone so they can hear that I'm really trying, and I'm really trying to help them work it out. So
the knowledge gap, and I when you said talking down to someone, I think too that I have there's another layer to that too, that I want to just as quickly as we can, because we haven't even touched half of things. Talking down to women.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I have been called sweetheart, which is condescending as crud. We were watching Landman last night, and it's like, well, sweetheart. And I was like, whoa, to a waitress on the show. And I'm just like, I'm hoping that we have gotten past treating women as not as smart. I have a lot of really smart women out there, and I have watched in our travels a condescending attitude from a lot of salesmen. That is, it's really offensive.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I'm just putting in there, let's really be careful, because it's one thing to be condescending, because you've got these people in front of you that it's not easy, but that you being condescending in how you explain something that you're like, this is basic. But when you add a layer of looking at someone in a manner of sexism, whatever, and I don't want to get off on the social stuff, but that is a real thing. For those of you that are out there being salespeople or whatever, just be there.
Yeah, and I would say for that, there are cultural things, right? They're regional things. Like in the South, you'd be more likely to hear a sweetheart or that kind of stuff. And it may not be intended the way that it's received, but I think we don't need to risk that. Like we we can, like in certain places that if I say yes, ma'am, they think I'm talking to like an old woman. It's like, it's like there can be some of that. But I think your point is that I think we can avoid that altogether and not be, we don't need to step in that hole. And so I think we can talk to people about that.
So let's move on to the next one. Underwriting it through a long-minded,
through a long,
long-minded
I put it up
lens.
and you put it up. So I'll stay off of the button.
Okay.
So
underwriting through a long-minded lens.
Okay. So, when we think about the underwriting, obviously this is getting into beyond lead management. Now it's getting down to decisioning, right? Now we're structuring and we're deciding how we're going to underwrite paper. So, like one of the key software providers in our space is, I remember them telling us that, not software providers, like an underwriting tool a provider. They explained that they're really analyzing three things. They're looking at the customer profile, their qualifications, credit-wise, past repos, et cetera. They're looking at the deal structure, right? And then the last one would be the collateral itself, the car that the customer's buying, how's it going to perform? So obviously the car is the car. That's not something we're talking about here in terms of flexibility. But I would say when it gets into underwriting, this is where even more creativity comes into play. And I think I think if I'm the underwriter, you're the salesperson, my creativity is helpful. But if you've already broomed the customer, I never get a chance in underwriting to use my own creative capabilities because you've already broomed the customer saying they weren't qualified, right? So this is assuming that you were flexible, you got the person in front of me, and I'm still trying to work the deal and make it fit for the customer, whatever. So in underwriting, my definition here of underwriting would be around, how do we finalize and approve the deal? And so there's some of that is deciding underwriting before the customer's ever in front of us. And then there's the flexibility of working with the customer, while we're in underwriting, because the deal is a little tight. I'll give a quick example. This is the language I used to use a lot, especially in chat threads and training people to have a conversation chat thread. When you're talking to a customer about payments. So I wrote them down here. I'm going to give you I wrote down 6 levers.
Okay.
That we can work with in working with a customer to make a deal fit. The customer's down payment at delivery, right? Their trade-in, whatever we're doing about their trade-in, right? That can also be a lever. Any deferred down, if we're going to do additional deferred down payment after delivery, that can be a factor. Irregular payments, which are like those tax time scheduled payments. That's been a conversation this week. We'll probably bring that and talk about that more specifically as we head to tax refund season. And then obviously the payment itself, where we set the payment itself. And then the last one would be term. So when I think about that, if I'm, again, a salesperson, I'm chatting with you and you're interested in buying a car, and you say to me, because it's common in a chat thread, they'll say, can I get a car with a payment of $400 a month? Well, I don't react negatively. Some salespeople might say, heck no, our payments start around 600. Well, I just gave you all these levers. There's all kinds of ways we could get there. Depends on how much down payment you do and how much trade-in you've got and how we're scheduling. But the part that I would say that's phrasing that this is an example. It's representative of, I could say to you as the customer, we try to keep our payments or our payment contracts no more than 36 months, but we've got some flexibility on that. So think about what I just said, because I'm trying to help the customer frame what I'm working toward. I'm trying to make the thing fit for us and for the customer. And I'm trying to say, we try to keep our payment schedules no more than about 36 months, because that's good for you and it's good for us. We don't want a thing to run too long. It's going to get high interest, right? The interest is going to accumulate. So we're trying to keep it to around 36 months, but we've got some flexibility on that. Okay. So this is just me saying, we've got some soft edges here we can work with, right? And so I can try to help, but that's, I call it working inside the box. There's a lot of talk about outside the box. And so this is kind of, if you think about staying inside this box, this is the frame that we're trying to work within and make the deal fit. And I think where we'd like to have some flexibility. When we have a real hard policy, and when you think about payment, you also think naturally about payment to income ratio. That's what you're looking at, customer's ability. But these are all things that we have to look at. How much flexibility can we have in the interest of making a deal and make it make sense, right? And so this is where I think we gotta listen and be ready to live in the gray space a little bit.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about we talk about the tax time, and we're coming into that a little bit, but if your payment would be 600 and they want it down to 400, it's like, well, then can you afford every year $2,400 at tax time? Because that's where we can meet that gap.
Right.
It's like bringing that in. And so, a lot of people, it's like, oh, I can keep my payments down to 400 if I come up with 2,400 and I normally get X amount. So yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. For sure.
Okay. So next one, strategic exceptions and emotional exceptions.
I love this conversation.
Versus emotional
Yeah.
exceptions.
And I love this because it reminds me of conversations we've had on, I think we did Tote the Note podcast years ago with Steve Levine around this idea about the compliance in underwriting. How much flexibility can we have? Like here we are talking about flexibility in underwriting. It's like, how flexible can we get? Well, as a former dealer, I'm prepared to make my case when I'm being flexible in the interest of the customer. Right. So let's think about what that means to me. It's like I'm saying I'm trying to work with the customer. I'm making exceptions. Now, what Steve Levine would say is that if you're going to make exceptions, be sure to log them, because this is where we have to make sure that we're documenting that why we chose because we're obviously the regulatory people are trying to make sure we're not doing anything that's discriminatory, and so it's understandable. I do think we're going to be in the gray space and buy here, pay here underwriting from time to time. And so what that means is that when we do step out there and make an exception for someone, we agree to do a little higher PTI, for example, then we want to log that. I think Steve called it an exception log. We want to keep that log and document why we chose to deviate. But I think what this is really asking us to think about is the emotional element. And instead of making wild gut calls, is what it says, then some would call that a WAG. So people know what that is. So I don't have to explain it. And then as opposed to having rigid rules. So, we've talked plenty about the rigidity element. When we're super rigid, we're going to miss a lot of business. We're just going to miss a lot of business because there's just a whole lot of customers that don't fit in the box. But I think they would still be a good candidate for your program if we could learn to look past this one thing today and look at the likelihood of success over 3 years, 10 years, 30 years, right? So.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Flexible payment structures build loyalty.
Yeah, and that was ChatGPT feeding that to us. I've felt that way, but basically it's suggesting that there's loyalty in that. And I would agree. I think, again, we can come back and talk more at length about irregular payments. I did learn yesterday in talking to a dealer is in North Carolina, as an example. And years ago, I had a dealer tell me, I love this idea of doing irregular payments at tax refund season, but my state won't allow me to do it. And I did a little research when this came up again with a dealer in North Carolina, and my research said that you still can't do it. They want the payments to be the same. So this is, again, and if you're listening, state of North Carolina, sometimes rigidity and buy here, pay here is a problem for the consumer that we're trying to help. They're trying to protect the consumer, and it's admirable. I would say, why? So if I can structure a deal with a customer that allows them to put their $1,000 down today, which is hard to come up with right before Christmas for a lot of our customers, right? So if they can do $1,000 down today, and they want to try to keep their payments at $450, as an example. Well, if I could tell the customer, would you be agreeable if when you get a tax refund, we talked about it, you guys typically get a tax refund with 3 kids, and it's common for you to get a sizable tax refund. If we scheduled about $1,000 of additional payment in March, when you get your tax refund, then what that's going to let you do, or let me help to do, is I can now keep your regular payments throughout the rest of the loan a little more affordable. If you'll just promise that one irregular payment in March. As cars have gotten more expensive, contracts have got longer, I've gone to suggesting we do 2 of them. Let's do one March of 2026 and March of 2027. I can schedule that in the contract as long as my software will accommodate.
Yes.
As long as my contract will accommodate that regular schedule on the printout,
Mhm.
and my state is okay with it, then I would say that's a win for the customer. And you can see it in the customer's face, like, oh, you could do that? Like, that's huge. Like, if I could pay a little something from my tax refund, and that's going to help me keep my regular payments lower. Think about what just happened there.
Mhm.
And so this is an example where flexibility and
Oh,
structure
absolutely.
makes it, and it lets us solve that PTI thing that we're bumping up against all the time. You know, let's keep the payments lower.
Mhm.
And I think the difference in us winning that customer and not, and I shared, we can again talk about it more length when we come back and dig into that subject more, but I share with our B8 groups kind of what my past experience was with those. And so we can go through those numbers.
All right, next one. Collections.
Mhm.
Firm posture, flexible pathways.
Okay. So this is really about, so let me read what it says here. It's not about being soft. It's about having more than one play in the playbook. Okay. So this is about having kind of, I call it tools in the tool belt, right?
Mhm.
So flexible plans reduce charge-offs, increase recoveries, and make customers feel respected, not cornered. Okay. So this is getting into an area where, you know, we can maintain a firm posture. And I talk a lot, we've used the phrase over the years about being flexible but firm. Right. And so we're going to be friendly but firm too is another one that comes up. So we can work with customers without giving away the farm or giving away the dealership. In this case, we don't have to always say yes to the customer and do everything they are asking to do. But having some degree of flexibility in there creates it facilitates communication, encourages future communication. I'll give you an example. I thought about this situation. This happened to me years ago. I remember having a conversation with somebody. I had a payment. Somebody was calling me about it that I'd missed, right, on my own situation. And when they called, I just took the call and I said, would I be able to schedule that for such and such, date in the future? And they said, yeah, unfortunately, I'm only authorized to schedule it within such and such. And so I can't remember the outcome on that. It doesn't really matter for this story. It's like, but the point is, what really happened there is it kind of created a situation where, okay, so there's really almost no reason for me to talk to you today if I'm not in a position to pay it within the 14 days or 10 days or whatever the number was. So that's the significant part I want to drive home, is that we can create a scenario where our customers just really,
Why would I talk to you?
what's the benefit of talking if you can't do anything for me here? Then why answer your calls?
And that is something completely in our control.
Right.
It completely in our control, and it's that whole trust thing and opening up communication pathways. All of that is when we are overly rigid, and someone has been through, because we know that our customers have their ups and downs, their ebbs and flows, know. And so this may be the second time that this has happened, and it's like they're not going to answer your phone call.
Yeah.
And that's something we complain about.
And we've created that.
Answer your phone call.
We've created that scenario ourselves. And look, I'm not saying, let's be super clear here. Of course, you need to have policy limits. And of course, your collector one or your level one collector will have certain limits. But what I'm really talking about is, how do we make exceptions to that policy swiftly so that a customer can be taken care of? We can grant an exception where it's appropriate without giving away the farm and just kind of, letting the whole thing get loosey-goosey. Is we can maintain policies, but have the ability to adapt quickly. I like giving collectors a certain amount of latitude to do some of these kind of things, so that we can be agile, we can be nimble in working with customers, and this whole thing is everything about the white hat way approach to collections is built on this idea that this customer is going to be with us a very long time. So this payment that we're wrestling over today is really a small thing. So what we have to kind of cover this line. If I think about a collection supervisor or a collector, they have to find this line between being flexible without giving away too much. And so now they've created this situation where the customer expects it every time. And so that's the line that we walk. But I would choose that line of being flexible and having to rein it back in over the alternative, because being too rigid means way too many repos. And that's not the outcome I'm looking for as a white hat dealer. right?
Yeah. And I think that we see dealers like, we're just going to throw it at the end of the loan.
Mm-hmm.
Take the payment, throw it at the end of the loan.
Mm-hmm.
That really doesn't drive home the responsibility of making your payments.
Right.
It's just like, oh, if I can't make the payment, we'll just throw it on the end of the loan. And so, one of the things that we've encouraged people to do is like, okay, so if that happens and you've exhausted all the things, it's like, all right, here's what we're going to do is we're going to up your payment by $20, $50. And this is just an idea. Every payment is going to be up by $50 until this balance is paid off, or when March 1st happens.
Right.
Because if whatever it is that's left
Mm-hmm.
will be paid off with your tax.
Yeah.
Tax return.
And just so you know, this becomes a limitation of software.
It
So I think
does.
this is something that people need to be aware of. Sometimes having a good software is going to
Mhm.
accommodate more of these kind of things. And so I think this is something that but I think you're referring to something I've said that,
Mhm.
I used to have customers that would finance with us, and maybe 2 months into the loan, they're saying, "Hey, I'm a little short on my payment, or I had to
Mhm.
buy some shocks for my car or whatever. Can you take my payment and put it to the end of the loan?" That was your phrase. That was their phrase. Sometimes I think, where did they hear that? They didn't hear it from me. They didn't hear it. They might have heard it from somebody on their team or on our team.
Yeah.
Or they may have heard it. They may have done that with another dealer they financed
Mhm.
with in the past. So this is
Mhm.
another thing for us to be aware of,
Yeah.
is those practices are going to affect us
Yeah.
when it comes time for the customer to finance with us. So we developed a practice where we just said, no, it never went to the end of the loan. We worked out other ways to get it paid. And so you gave an example of how that can be done.
Okay. The next one is the human factor in account management.
Okay. So obviously humaning is something we talk about.
We
People,
do.
right? And so how do we keep the human element into it? You want to read what it says there?
And I want to say that this goes for just about everybody. People go through seasons.
Mhm.
That is humaning 101.
Yeah.
Job changes, medical hits, childcare explosions. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Dealers who adopt to life curveballs end up with lower repos and more referrals.
Yeah.
So, there are ways to do that, to work with the ebbs and the flows. Because even that's every human.
Right.
Every human out there
Sure.
has like, well, that came out of nowhere,
Right.
or wasn't expecting that, and then you have to adjust. You have to step back.
Yeah.
All of that. It doesn't mean that you are giving away the farm
Mhm.
in the process, but understanding that a sob story,
Mhm.
which I've heard salespeople, it's a sob story. Those things freaking happen, and people that have a sob story that are in a low credit score,
Yeah.
it's much more impactful than this sob story happens for someone who has a 700 credit score, because it's like, things happen. There's a job change. I got laid off from my job.
Yeah.
That's a different, people that have had it, they've got, maybe have a savings and they can carry themselves for 6 months or whatever. Those things happen to everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and some of us, I heard dealers, it's like, well, they should know better and they should have us. It's like, they don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah.
It's like, what planet are you on when you think, well, they're not planning for the future? Do you understand our customers?
That's the dealer who's got their own knowledge gap,
Wow,
So it's like they're misunderstanding about this customer. So I think here's the part I would say. Life can be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It has its moments for most of us.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a customer in this country with a poor credit score and lower income, those setbacks can be more devastating. They can be more challenging to navigate. And when you're with a creditor, in this case, a buy here, pay here dealer, lease here, pay here dealer, who's not working with you, then that becomes very pressurized. It becomes very stressful and frustrating, and the outcome tends to be bad in those situations. So it's question is, can we develop a long-minded approach that allows us to think past to today's payment? I always remember there was a dealer I worked with from up north years ago who said, and this is a different conversation, but used to say, we try to think past the down payment. In other words, it was only one element when they're considering approving underwriting. And I would say the same is true here. Can we learn to think past this payment? And I would say we really want to look at our policies to make sure that we're not placing so much pressure around this one payment that we're losing deals, ending up with repos because we just couldn't allow ourselves to get past that setback of the day.
Absolutely. Okay, next one. Flexibility is a trust deposit.
Yep.
We talk about trust deposits all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the more it's, we've, and I'll reiterate quickly, every relationship has a trust bank.
Yeah.
Has an equity bank.
Yep.
And so when you build and you're making deposits every day, and this can be in a marriage, this can be in a partnership with business, this can be a customer and a business. When you are making deposits daily of like, I'm listening,
or routinely,
all of those, that when that happens, you have more equity, you have more ability to be able to work together to get through the hard stuff. There was a podcast I listened to recently where Brene Brown, I don't know if y'all know who she is, but she has made a career on studying relationships and studying, she's a scientist and lots and lots and lots of experience and case studies and all of that. And she was talking about equity in just a leadership role and how a leader, again, ebbs and flows. An organization can experience everything. So, an organization hits a ebb, a hard back, or a hard time. And so the leader brings everyone together and says like, trust me, we're going to work this way, work it out. And it's like, trust you. I mean, if you've not built any equity, but the leader that will swing through and it's as they're walking in, it's like, hey, Jeff, how are you doing? Is your wife feeling better? Okay, good. Is there anything we can do? Right. All right, great. Those are trust deposits. And so part of that with, the flexibility of being able to listen and be able to work with someone and, how can we help? And the listening,
right?
Huge trust deposits, because when those hard things happen, they feel like they have a relationship with you.
Right.
This is a relational business. This is, some people
do
it transactionally.
We
want it to be a relationship, because when you lean into it being a relationship business, you can weather those storms and, flexibility, trust deposits.
Yeah. And so that you call equity, I would say you could build up some goodwill so that you if we think about the dealer customer relationship here, we build up that equity, we build up that goodwill. And so now the other thing that happens here, and ChatGPT raised the idea, is that when customers feel like you're trying to help them win, they stop hiding problems. Like, this is so big to me. It's like this idea that, they want to just recoil and stop talking to us unless they trust that we truly are interested in a successful outcome, right?
Yeah.
So they can begin to communicate with us about the difficult stuff when they can trust that there's not going to be some, harsh retaliation. Right?
One of the things, and this is, I've worked in customer service. Very fast paced, certain seasons where it gets really, really tense. When you encourage or kind of require your collections people, your collections team, or even if they come in and they're talking to the owner or whatever, take good notes. And then when that person calls in, refer to their notes. And this is a skill to be able to read while you're having a conversation. And some softwares, I'm sure, will allow you to bring it up really fast. And so you can pin things to the top. So, when it's like that, hey, Jeff, how's your wife doing? When they call in and oh gosh, my mom just went through open heart surgery, but you haven't talked to him for 2 or 3 months, but that's the first thing that it's like, hey, before we get into this, how's your mom doing? About 3 months ago, you'd said that,
Right.
can you, I mean, imagine the amount of like,
Right. Yeah.
wow, they're listening to me.
Right.
How impactful that is.
Right.
Taking good notes when you interact with someone, when there is something, when there's a challenge or a celebration or all of that. It's such a great opportunity. You know, like I said, we worked with really, really high challenge, whatever. And some of my team, someone would call in and it's like, I want to talk to so-and-so, because they built a relationship and they trusted them that they were going to help them resolve the thing. We had in our budget to send flowers when someone passed away. We even did it for when their dog did, because they were broken up. It's like, that's been my life, you know, and we just sent a little, hey, we're thinking about you, and little things like that.
Sure.
I kind of digress, but it's like, when you listen and you take notes and you really act with a sense of, you're a human, I'm a human, humaning is hard.
I think the notes are, but if you don't truly care, like if you care, then you're going to be more likely to have notes and remember, right? And so I think that's why just, gotta care.
Should I move on to the last one? Okay, so last one is the competitive edge is flexibility as your brand.
Yeah, and I think we can close with something that I view as vitally important in this whole subject. You can put flexibility out there as your brand. I'll give an example. I did a complete overhaul of a dealership years ago. I was kind of started as a consulting arrangement, and I became a general manager for them and went through a complete restructuring of the business, relocated, rebranded, the whole thing. And one of the big signs that we put up was just phone number, website, and it said fast, friendly, flexible. Fast, friendly, flexible. And you don't want to say it. You don't want to put that out there as your brand. We also put on the front of the glass 15-minute approvals, and we did it. We stuck by that. 15 minutes from the time the application was turned in, we had a yes or no decision.
That's the application. That's not the
whole process, right?
Prior to, but it's a 15-minute approval
from the time all the stuff was signed and turned in. Then we had a 15-minute decision, and it might be conditional, but we definitely made a 15-minute decision. So we followed through on the fast part. We certainly emphasized the friendliness all the way throughout. But I think you don't want to say flexible on your sign unless you really are prepared to show up and be flexible every day of the week. So, because otherwise your reputation gets, soured because you claim to be, but you're not. And so I think this is the simple thing about the actions speak louder. It is show. And when you put it on your sign and you show that you really are flexible and you work with people, the word gets out. People say, go see them. They'll work with you.
And it's interesting because, when you talk about your tools and your tool belt, just having, when someone calls you with a flexibility is offering them options. Because if it's like pay your payment or but it's like, okay, here are some options. Even if none of the options fit, you're still showing flexibility by giving them options.
Right.
And there's, I don't know, those of you parents out there, parenting with love and logic. People like to feel like they have some semblance of control.
Right.
And that's from when they're toddlers to the grave.
Right.
People, you think about your loved ones that are in a nursing home and how heavy that is for them because they don't have, when my mom had her driver's license taken away, it was because she was like, was that a dog? And no, Mom, it was a black garbage sack on the side of the road. That's like, it's kind of scary. And it takes away, and they feel, they're feeling more and more boxed in because they don't have options. They don't have flexibility. So when parenting love and logic, it's like when you have a temper, you're giving a black and white, go put your coat on. It's cold outside. I don't want to put a coat on. I don't want to put a coat. Instead, it's time to go pink one or white one. Which one works for you?
Right.
And then they have the power to choose which one works best for them. And you don't end up having the temper tantrum or, adult whatever that you have when people feel like they have
choices
options and choices. So part of flexibility is give them some options. Which one works best for you? Well, none of them does. Okay. Well, let me see if there's something else that we can give you an option. And if it isn't, it's like, then we just, we're kind of at an impasse, and I don't know, but it's that whole process through that really, really makes the difference.
Yeah. And I think all of this, I'm just aware, thinking about this, and it's a challenging thing to help dealers calculate. But when you think about the price of inflexibility means losing a customer and having to go replace them. And I think we just need to get better at calculating, what does it cost us to lose a customer, or what does it cost us to gain a new customer? And so I think the benefit associated with flexibility is such that we can save that customer, we can keep them on the books, we can get past the headache. And again, we don't have to give away the farm to get there.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, it's something to really consider when you talk about the cost. What is the cost of a repo? And what is the cost of gaining a new customer? You add those two. Is this account worth giving up for, I mean, what do they say that it's, how much was it? Like, I've heard numbers about what the actual cost to gaining a customer is. And it's,
you mean, well, just what you spend in advertising alone, but that doesn't count your overhead.
It's all of the stuff. And so, if you can sit down, and it's like, it changes your perspective really, really fast.
Right.
It's like, to do a repo, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars to have a tow truck, and the thing, and all the things. And then how much does it cost to replace that customer? It's like, is it worth the $2,000?
Right.
Or when we can get the $2,000, if we can be flexible with them, and then we keep a customer, we might gain new ones from referrals, and
we'll build our cash flow, build our portfolio, build our cash flow. But mostly we just want to save that customer, because not only did we lose the account and the $500 payment, as an example, we had a customer go away unhappy, and they're going to tell an unhappy story in our market. And so there's a price of that too. So let's save more customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's White Hat Wednesday, and we know, Ken, you have a lot of places to choose to spend your time. Thank you for spending some of your time with us today. We will be back on Friday with the completion of
the Jeff Owings conversation. My pick 6
really good
questions.
Stuff in there. Yeah. So, all right. Thanks again, everybody, for joining. And we hope that you have a wonderful day. And
we'll see you back here on Friday.
All right. Have a great day.